Well, hello everyone, it's Dr. Stevens, and I thought I would do a quick overview of the journal assignment that you have for our course each week. And this particular assignment is really meant to be very intensive in terms of analysis and in terms of writing, so that when you get to the end of the course, you really have something to take with you that is a reminder of this narrative, that you can actually leave the course and have pretty much a skeleton outline of the narrative of U.S. veterans history, and that you can actually plug that narrative into the larger narrative, broader narrative that you've been learning as historians, but also take it with you in terms of other courses and see how veterans history fits over other narratives that you are learning. So it's meant to be something that allows you to analyze the material, because there's a lot of that material, and to also help you to pare down what we're learning. So to start out with, let's look at some of the requirements. It's required that you write at least a 5-sentence paragraph for each question listed, unless it's otherwise noted, like the thesis statement, which I would suggest would be 1 to 3 sentences. But you obviously do not have to write a 5-sentence thesis statement. That would be a little bit odd, right? But when you go through the other questions, you'll see that these are really analytical questions, right? And you have a lot of materials to go through. So you really want to create complex answers, right? And so the 5 sentences is something that I throw out there, where I know you could write more. You might be able to write a little bit less, but I want you to make sure that you are hitting that 5-sentence mark at least, simply because of how complex everything is in terms of analysis and materials, right? So we're going to grade these in terms of the depth of that analysis. We're also going to grade these in terms of how well you know the narrative that you've been studying, and how clearly you present that to us too. You also have the responses to at least 2 of your classmates each week. And what I want you to do with these is to not tell people, what a great job they did, or somehow critique or give them feedback for what they've said, right? I really want you to connect with what they're talking about, connect it with what you learned for the week, and then really have a discussion about the materials, or maybe, ask questions of your colleagues, to get more of a sense of where they're coming from, or to get a really different perspective on the materials, right? But I don't like it when students say, "Boy, you did a really good job with this," or "You did a really good job with that." The other student doesn't need to know that. Okay, they want to have a dialogue with you, and you want to, again, you might want to ask questions, or you might want to make connections between the other student's journal and yours. So in terms of these, make them substantive, right? Make them something that you could actually generate some discussion with. I do ask that you cite all of the work that you put in the journals, quotations, paraphrases, summaries, all of that. It'll help you in the end to know where the materials came from, so that you can actually plug them into your final assignments. You may use MLA or Chicago style, whichever one that you want. And it's just really important for you to be able to do this, not just to be able to find the materials, but to give credit where credit's due, right? In terms of the actual questions, so this first one here, in terms of the main themes, I don't mind if you do this one in terms of a list, right? And not the 5 sentences. You could actually list the main themes. I ask that you have at least 3 of them that are not from the lecture. And I'm sure that, as you have seen with the materials you're reading, I clearly cannot cover everything in the lecture, simply because it would be, a few hours worth of a lecture instead of under an hour. So I want to make sure that you are pulling from the materials too, not just from my lecture. So highlight those main themes. What are the main things that you grappled with in terms of the material? What are the main things that happen? What are the main events, right? In the second question here, as many of you know who study history, historians study continuity, but very specifically, they study change over time, right? And so this change over time is really what historians are focusing on, in terms of being able to expand the narrative, or to explain how things happen, right? And so the idea of looking at the changes, you're going to see changes within the era that you're looking at. And as you move to the next modules, you're obviously going to be able to pull in some of the changes that you've seen over time, right? Instead of just within the era. But really go into depth in terms of illustrating your understandings of how things changed. When you move to the next question, you're going to be explaining in more depth that change over time, right? So how did that change over time really come about? What is the pattern that you see here in terms of how there were changes, say, in benefits, or how there would be changes in terms of political participation? So really delve very deeply into that and illustrate to me that you've analyzed how the major points of evolution came about in the particular era, or if you're making those connections beyond each in terms of each week, putting the two weeks together or week after week together, that you're really illustrating to me that you know how those points of evolution came about. The next thing here that many of you have taken courses with me before, have seen this in the journals, is that I want you to talk about the most surprising thing that you found in the module and in the materials that we're looking at, right? So talk to me about, something that was shocking to you, or something that you just didn't know, and now the wheels are turning for you, or you've made a significant connection, or created an understanding for yourself via this surprising thing, right? So what is the most surprising issue? What is the most surprising element of the narrative that you found so far in this week? The next question, not necessarily a question, but that you were supposed to make the thesis statement for the week. And what I want you to do here is to create an argument, an overarching argument about the materials, right? Not just one specific issue, but basically giving me an argument about veterans in this period and what they endured or what they were able to accomplish, right? So you want to look at sort of the arc of what we are actually studying for the week to create the argument, rather than focusing on one particular thing to make an argument about, right? So the argument, I really want it to be something solid. It would be something that you would be able to argue in a paper, right? It would be something that really has some meat to it, right? So make sure that you're creating something that's pretty, again, substantive. In terms of the next question, you want to make sure you don't have to do this for the first journal, so you can skip over this particular question for the first journal. But as we move to module 2, module 3, and so forth, you're going to start seeing great connections between the materials, right? And so I want you to be able to tell me briefly in those 5-ish sentences how you see the material connecting, how you see one era connecting to another era, or how one era reaches back to another era, right? And make sure that you are, I say be brief, and maybe to you 5 sentences isn't brief, and then it's a great deal of writing. But many students can go on and write paragraph after paragraph about this, right, in the connections. So I want you to be brief in that one particular paragraph, and to illustrate to me that you are doing the analysis here, that you know how things are connecting, because as somebody who's trying to study a narrative that's ever changing, you want to be able to make those connections and to really understand, again, the evolution of the narrative and the evolution of the periods. In terms of the 7th question, this is only for those individuals who are veterans and will be writing about themselves later on in the course, or you are somebody who's going to be doing an oral history. So what you'll do here is you'll really think about the narrative and see how it correlates to your own experiences as a veteran or somebody in the military right now, or how it connects to the experiences of your subject. For many of you, I know you already have your subject in mind, right? And more than likely, even though you're going to sit down and do a formal interview with them, you already know them and you've already probably talked to them about this, or have some sort of an understanding of their of their connections to the period that we're looking at, right? So you really want to be able to see how the narrative, say the Revolutionary War veterans, or say the veterans of World War I would connect to your veteran, right? As you move through the modules. In terms of the final question, those of you who are focusing on historiography or interpretations and the narrative of the course, you want to take the primary sources and look at them. And then you want to think of a major assertion that I've made, the materials have made, or you have made for yourself in terms of the material for the week. And you want to illustrate how that primary source actually proves that assertion. So you're going to make the assertion and then you're going to use the primary source to prove it, okay? And you know that we have primary sources each and every week, right? So make sure that you're looking at those so that you can pull those in. Also, those of you who are already researching these topics, you can pull your own primary source from online if you want to, but just make sure that it is certainly a primary source, and that you can correlate it to something that you are going to make a major assertion about, or that I have, or the material has. Okay, so make sure it's something that is actually of the time that we're studying. Okay, and then finally here, I have the option of you recording your journal entry. And you certainly may do this. You do not have to do it, but I know students actually like to practice presentations. Maybe you're going to be a teacher. Maybe this is, a career change that you're making here and you've never made presentations before in your previous career. Or maybe it is that you just enjoy talking as opposed to writing, right? So you have the option of writing recording the journal entry rather than writing it. Again, it's an option. You certainly may just write it, okay? But if you choose to actually record it, there's some instructions here that you can look at, and that can tell you how to upload things to Canvas, okay? You can also use things like Screen-O-Matic and stuff like that to actually create your journal entry, okay? So if you have any further questions about the journal, again, put them in the community forum, or you can also email me personally and I can discuss them with you, okay? Try to have some fun with this. It is intensive, but it is really interesting material, right? So sort of the act of being a historian or somebody who's a scholar who's analyzing things, you really sometimes dig into it and really enjoy it, right? So enjoy that process of analyzing, of synthesizing, and then writing it. And again, if you have any issues whatsoever, even while you're writing your post, please let me know, and I'm happy to help, okay? Take care.